Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Tim Beckman, and I'm the Executive Coordinator for the Mortgage Investment Association of British Columbia. At this time, I'd like to read a short note from our president, Andy Pham. Everyone has been through quite a bit over the past 2 years with the onset of COVID-19. The pandemic has forced us to consider new ways of living and working, which will continue to profoundly impact our way of life going forward. Hopefully, we're coming to a point in time where we can all safely gather with each other. Last Thursday marked the first live in-person event that MIABC has hosted since February 2020. For those of you who made it out to the Terminal City Club to mix and mingle and enjoy a few bites and drinks, thank you. But not only for that event, but overall, the Board of Directors would like to wholeheartedly thank you for your continued support of the MIABC. Your membership is what propels this organization. And with that, I'd like to pass it to today's sponsor of the developers panel, Rabbi Bosaid from Turner & Townsend, to say a few words about himself and his company before introducing the panel members and the moderator.
Thank you, Tim. Thanks for joining, everyone. I hope we could have done this in person today, but I'm sure there will be other opportunities to meet in the near future. For those of you who are not familiar with our company, Turner & Townsend is the program, project, and cost management consultancy behind the delivery and operation of the world's largest and most notable construction projects. In Canada, we are involved in projects across the country that include small to large iconic projects. Now in our 75th year, we are driving performance to create a more sustainable, inclusive, and productive future. At the heart of our values has been the opportunity to create a better future for the industry, which can help solve some of the big problems faced not only by industry, but also our society. We have built a reputation for making the difference and creating strong relationships with some of the world's best-known companies in real estate, infrastructure, and natural resources. At Turner & Townsend, we want to help build a world where opportunities are open to all. People can live safe and healthy lives that foster trust between clients, suppliers, governments, and other stakeholders in our society. Trust creates the conditions to deliver better, more ambitious programs and projects, both large and small, across British Columbia and Canada. If you haven't worked with us before, please reach out. Loan monitoring and cost estimating is what we call our bread and butter, but there's much more that we can help you with, whether it's project controls, risk management, basically help you deliver your projects within the intended design on budget and schedule. And I can drop my email later in the chat box for anyone for you to reach out. So thank you. And it's my pleasure to introduce our moderator and speakers for today's event. Moderating this event would be Jacqueline O'Neill from Bentall Green Oak. Jacqueline is the principal investment at Bentall Green Oak, which she joined in December 2018. She has over 16 years of experience in the investment and management of real estate and is responsible for sourcing and executing BGO's investment program in Western Canada. Previously, she worked in asset management and oversaw a portfolio of office, industrial, multi-residential, and retail assets throughout British Columbia, valued at over $1.4 billion. Before joining Bentall Green Oak, she worked at Triovest and began her career as an appraiser with the Altus Group. Jacqueline has a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science and Economics and a Diploma in Urban Land Economics from the University of British Columbia. She's also an accredited appraiser with the AACI. Thanks for joining, Jacqueline. I'd like to introduce our speakers as well. Fabian Leitner from Strand Developments. Fabian is the Strand's Director of Development, responsible for a variety of large-scale mixed-use, rental, condo, and commercial industrial projects throughout Vancouver and Vancouver Island, where Strand has over 3,500 homes at various stages of development, including over 2 million square feet of commercial and industrial floor area. With over 15 years of real estate development experience across a variety of disciplines, including brokerage, acquisitions, development management, and overall customer experience, Fabian possesses a holistic understanding and appreciation for real estate development. He's a founding member of NAIOP Vancouver's Developing Leaders Committee, a past chair of the new Westminster UDI Design Panel, and an avid supporter of thoughtful densification. Next, we have Kristin Devaney from Pci Developments. Kristin is responsible for providing leadership and overall financial direction for the finance and accounting functions for Pci Developments and Warrington Pci Management. She provides strategic direction and oversees all financing and capital activities. Kristin obtained her chartered accountant designation at Deloitte and has held various senior finance roles in the real estate, finance, and infrastructure industries. We also have Matt Siemens from Westbank. As VP Finance, Matt is responsible for managing lender and partner relationships, as well as securing financing at all levels of the capital stack for all asset types throughout the project lifecycle. He also oversees the Westbank team responsible for project financial analysis from acquisition to completion. Matt holds a Bachelor of Commerce, major in finance from the University of British Columbia, and a Master of Global Business from the University of Victoria. He's an absolutely terrible beer league hockey player, but tries pretty hard. I think you should try harder, Matt. And has been volunteering with Big Brothers of Greater Vancouver for the last 8 years. So thank you for moderator and speakers for joining us today, and I'll pass it over to Jacqueline to lead the discussion.
Awesome. Thank you, Ravi, and thanks to Turner and Townsend for sponsoring today's session. Firstly, welcome everyone. Thank you for tuning in and lending your ears to this year's MIABC's developer panel. As we said, I'm Jacqueline O'Neill, Principal of Investments at Bentall Green Oak, and I'm super excited to be joined by these three expert panelists today from the real estate development industry to help share their insights in the current real estate market, what they're seeing in terms of future trends, and to also help shed some light on their financing strategies and requirements. So thanks again, guys, for joining us today. We've got a lot of ground to cover, so why don't we just jump right in, hoping that each of you can start us off by giving us just a brief kind of overview of your company and your areas of focus today. Fabian, I'll pass it off to you first.
All right. Well, yeah, thank you very much for having me, and really excited to be here and to hear lots of exciting stuff from my fellow panelists at Strand. So a bit of an overview of Strand. So we're a 45-year-old company. We've got roots kind of in repositioning multifamily assets in BC, going all the way back to the 80s, and then graduated into providing equity financing for Canadian and American developers kind of in the late 80s and 90s, and did that really successfully and continue to do it successfully today. The company then evolved another arm, a true development arm, about 8 years ago that's led by Mike Mackay. And that kind of complements the strong financial kind of track record of the overall Strand company. So today, as was kind of mentioned in our bio, I guess, we have 35 homes under development across kind of a nice, I guess, cross section of product types, whether it's mixed use, commercial, residential, pure rental. We're doing some rental and then mixed condo projects, as well as a few really large scale commercial, whether it be office or industrial projects throughout Metro Vancouver and Vancouver Island. And we're hungry for more as well. So I think got a strong appetite, similar to Kristin and Matt, both of whose companies are doing lots of work. So I think we share some similarities there. It was kind of covered in my bio. I think kind of what I deal with on a day-to-day basis is overseeing a large section of that development portfolio, everything from acquisitions analysis all the way through to development management, and then making sure that what we're getting approved, entitled, and designed is actually highly saleable or leasable or rentable to our end user. Hopefully I didn't gloss over anything there.
I think you covered it, and I'm excited to hear what other insights you have today as part of that. Why don't I hand it over, Kristin?
Great. Thanks, Jacqueline. And thank you to MIABC for inviting me to join the panel today. So PCI's key focus is really in urban, transit-oriented, mixed-use communities. We've got sites, I think, at about 10 rapid transit stations in Metro Vancouver in our pipeline. We develop office, rental residential, retail, and in some cases condo, where it makes sense kind of in the broader sort of mixed use community. We work with a lot of institutional as well as private partners who invest alongside PCI. So we're really a developer, owner, and also an asset manager for third parties. I would say kind of similar to the other panelists today, over the last 2 years, PCI has been really active in acquiring strategic sites in Metro Vancouver. And I think that's really set us up well for a strong pipeline for the next 10 years. We're celebrating our 40th anniversary this year. So that's obviously a big milestone for us. And we've got a sister company, Warrington PCI Management, which is a property manager for our assets, but as well as third-party property management services. And just over a year ago, we acquired another property management company. So we're now the largest property manager in BC. And so that's really set us up with a really good integrated platform for development, asset management, and property management that takes us kind of from the early stages through to the long-term operating period of the property, both in terms of our own direct investment, but also in managing the investment on behalf of our capital partners.
Yeah, you definitely kind of see the whole, beginning to end, and the have to live with the project once you're done with it. So definitely some great insights, and looking forward to what you have to share today. And last but not least, onto a little company called Westbank here. Matt, maybe you could shed some light on in terms of what you guys are up to.
Yeah, a little company called Westbank. Thanks, Jacqueline. Thanks, everyone, for having me. Really appreciate it. Looking forward to the conversation. So Westbank, I guess we're the young company in the room, with Strand at 45 and PCI is a little older than us as well. We're founded about 30 years ago by a guy named Ian Gillespie, who is still a privately held company. Ian still runs the company and is here about 20 hours a day. The company sort of grew from humble beginnings, more in strip mall type development, and we've kind of grown to be one of the larger developers around. At this point, we've got about $50 billion of projects completed or under development, and those really span all the different asset classes: residential condo, residential rental, hotel, retail, workspace, affordable housing. We also own with our partner, Vancouver's district energy system, Creative Energy, and we operate a number of other more peripheral businesses: restaurants, gyms, spas, music venues, clubs, fashion companies, food halls, kind of you name it. I'd say what kind of defines Westbank is we're always trying to push the envelope and create really inspiring projects and environments. That often comes to fruition through large, complicated, mixed-use projects that we hope catalyze the areas that we're working in and the cities that we're working in, which for the most part, we're focused on Vancouver, Toronto, Seattle, San Jose, and Tokyo as well. As far as I'm concerned, nobody at Westbank really has titles or defined roles. I honestly just made one up for the purposes of my bio. We're all really just expected to jump in wherever is needed. But generally speaking, I'm involved more on the finance side of things. So managing a team of analysts that are involved in projects from acquisition all the way through to completion and operations, if we're holding on to that asset. And then as well, managing relationships and processes with our lenders and our financial partners. So really just making sure projects are making money and convincing people to give us money. That's about it in a nutshell.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. On to kind of our next question here for you guys. And it's, maybe you wrote your answer yesterday and it changed when you woke up and read the paper this morning. But seeing as all the different, different factors and things that we're seeing in the world today, influences in our market, interest rate changes, wanted to ask you guys, given this, rapidly changing landscape that we're facing today, what are your company's different strategies and how you navigate them? Looking at it, thinking of, uncertainty around municipal entitlements, rising interest rates, supply chain issues that we're hearing about, inflation. Really, open to hearing kind of your insights in terms of maybe you're taking it day by day, but any tips that you have for those listening, I'm sure would be appreciated. So, Kristin, we'll start with you. A small topic to cover.
It's funny, just before we got on the call, I decided to pick the brain of our head of construction, and it was like a very passionate conversation. So I think construction's never been more exciting than it is today. I would say kind of the biggest challenge we're facing right now really is on that construction side, including kind of the cost of labor, materials, and supply chain challenges. Obviously, steel and aluminum are a challenge, Ukraine being a big supplier of that. And also kind of globally, a lot of countries just locking down on exports. Canada does have a lot of raw materials for our production, but we do send a lot of it away for processing. So, there's a lot of talk of incentivizing opening up new mills, ways for us to be a bit more self-sufficient. So I think in the short term, we're going to continue to see increasing prices, but hopefully over the long term, it'll be a bit more sustainable. Our mechanical contractors that we work with are talking about price increases of 20 to 30%, which we've never seen before. So there's definitely some headwinds coming. We may see some projects with tighter margins getting shelved over the short term. So that'll be interesting. On the labor side, I would say even just looking 2 to 3 years down the road, there's probably a lack of skilled workers in the pipeline, lower number of young people going into trades. And we've seen sort of that generation retiring, the baby boomer kind of generation, maybe retiring a little bit earlier. So a little bit of challenge there. PCI is trying to make as meaningful of a contribution as we can. We've donated some money to the BCIT Trades and Technology Complex, which is a multi-building development that'll train future trades and technology professionals. So hopefully there's more that'll come out of that. In terms of how we're navigating that, we're fortunate to have really strong relationships with our general contractors and trades and the scale so that we can roll trades from one project to the next. We work hard to have a reputation for fair and timely payments and a really collaborative approach with our contractors. So that relationship piece is just really, really critical for us. We work on locking in strategic areas of the budget in advance, getting trades on board early, probably progress a lot of our design drawings a lot further than we would have before, just to manage any potential change orders. So I'd say on the construction side, it's all about partnering, de-risking, and choosing contractors and trades that we know will deliver. Entitlements are always a challenge. That's not going away. It's a risk. It's a very heavily involved process. But at the end of the day, let's face it, it creates a barrier to entry from an investment perspective into our industry. So it takes a lot of work. We devote a lot of hours at our senior management team. But once we get a project approved, it's got instant value. It's just creating a lot of value in the marketplace. So we try and work as collaboratively as possible with municipalities. We try and support staff who are trying to do their job, work collaboratively with them, get out into the community, be as genuine as we can, and be available to talk about it. It takes a lot of effort and digging in, but when we get it done, as I say, it creates a lot of value. Interest rates are a risk for sure. We're probably less exposed to it just because we don't have as much condo in our pipeline, but and we're looking at all of our investments as very long-term investments. But I mean, at the end of the day, we're underwriting. We use forward BA curves. We carry a contingency. We consider different ways of mitigating it through swaps or trying to fix interest rates early. But really, it is what it is. In a way, we can plan for it as best as we can. But we try and focus. Right now, we're focusing most of our efforts, or a lot of our efforts, on kind of managing construction and entitlements as best as we can.
leveraging those historical relationships. I mean, even getting access to the trades right now, I'm sure is a big one that, having that track record, I'm sure helps a lot. Matt, any further insights there in terms of how you guys are navigating today's rapidly changing landscape?
Yeah, I mean, Kristin took all the good answers, but I think I'd echo a lot of what she said in terms of, trying to manage what's just insane escalation in the construction market. Probably a lot of the same answers in terms of procuring as much of that as we can early on in the project and making sure our drawings are progressed as much as possible. It's kind of one of those things that a lot of effort's put into, but the best laid plans, things change quickly these days. Nobody really saw the pandemic coming or, what the impact of the conflict in the Ukraine would be. You really do need to a degree take what's coming at you and be really nimble and able to pivot quickly to the best of your ability. One thing Kristin mentioned was taking advantage of scale. That's a big thing for us, and really taking a bit of a diversified portfolio approach to a lot of these things. The obvious answers, we're kind of in all different asset classes and cities. So, if the condo market's down, maybe the office market's hot. If you're in the middle of a pandemic and the hotel market's not so hot, the residential rental market's on fire. But even beyond that, being in different cities, if Vancouver entitlements, and I'll say this without being disparaging, are taking forever, can take over 5 years to rezone a relatively hard site these days. Those challenges sometimes go in ebbs and flows, and we fortunately have a lot of business in other cities that can help smooth things out a little bit. San Jose, for example, we acquired a large portfolio of sites there at the beginning of 2020 with our partners, Peterson Group and OP Trust Pension Fund. And they're big, complicated sites, and the city is really eager to see them built. And, we've, for the most part, entitled all of those sites within a couple of years. So same thing on supply chain issues. And, it was already sort of mentioned, we've got a really great international procurement network, but also try to maintain strong relationship with local suppliers and trades as well. So as things pop up and, you can't get your curtain wall from Korea, you can switch to Singapore. And if, the cost of shipping containers are going up exponentially, you can focus more on the local markets. So, like I said, kind of a diversified approach and taking advantage of our scale and long-standing relationships as well. On the interest rate side, that's kind of a non-issue because all our lenders are just going to fix those rates at low rates for us regardless. So no problem there.
So simple.
Yeah.
Just a side question here, because I've been hearing it a little bit in the market. Traditionally on the institutional side, we've always gotten like GMP contracts or CCDC2 contracts where, along with what Kristin said, where you have that fixed component. But given how rapidly things have been changing in the past month, starting to hear some general contractors pushing back on that, saying, look, I don't know what the future holds, and more pivoting towards some of those construction management contracts, which may make financing more challenging, from the bank's perspective. Just wondering if you guys are seeing that in the market as well right now.
I mean, for Westbanks, definitely. And I think when you're getting into those GMPs and fixed price contracts, a lot of the times you're paying a premium anyways to de-risk things. And much of the time you can run into a situation where even if you have a signed contract, sub can't afford to hold it. And you're running into a difficult situation where if you're not at least coming to the table and trying to work with people to some degree, you're going to end up in a legal battle. So, we definitely do see that and just have to deal with it on a bit of a case-by-case basis.
Totally. Fabian, any other insights for the group here?
It's tough. I mean, if Matt got table scraps. I don't know what I got left here. It's really good points made. I would say like maybe taking a slightly different lens on it. Like how are we kind of mitigating some of that uncertainty? Is let's go to approvals. Like we typically avoid projects where we don't have a high level of comfort with municipal entitlements. So we're doing work in Vancouver. I agree with what Matt's saying. It's like entitlements take a long time, but if there's certain policies that we're comfortable with or areas that we've been in before, that for us, that experience de-risks it maybe more than the rest of the natural market. So that helps. I think the other thing is it's probably going to be said a lot today is it's relationships. So on acquisition side of things, it's relationships with the brokerage community to be able to capitalize on listed and off-market opportunities, and having great relationships with those brokers who know when to push and how to push us. And then on relationships, it's being involved with UDI groups, having good relationships with people working at the city, so we can really understand what are key policy goals. Where can we push? Where should we not? Those kind of, I often say it's like, hey, if we get 2 or 3% better, every month, we're going to be really good over the course of a year. So if we're just trying to get a couple percent better every month, that's going to help us get a bit of an edge. So I think that helps us. I don't think I need to talk too much about interest rates and supply chain. I think the panel's totally nailed it. Same thing with inflation as a byproduct of those, or something that we're trying to address. I think the other thing that we'll say that's kind of helping us, two more things that are helping us deal with uncertainty. It's been commented on about getting your trades involved early to comment on design. We absolutely agree with it. Another way to kind of deal with some of the uncertainty is to work with really good consultants. And we try and work with, a good portfolio of consultants across projects so that we can gain some efficiency. They know kind of what we like and we know what's important to them. And that can help us speed up some of our design work and also be more responsive to emerging trends, whether it's in municipal policy or just market dynamics. Step code being a big one. So I think that's really helpful for us. And then I think the last thing is easy to say, hard to do, but discipline. We're comfortable walking away from a deal right now and in the future because we kind of know that, sometimes it's better to live and fight another day. Over the last couple of years, I think we're in a good position because we were able to get really good pricing and terms on a variety of sites to kind of fill our pipeline through 2020 and 2021, where there was some real uncertainty that was generated by COVID. So I think it was a bit of like the Warren Buffett line of, be greedy when others are fearful and fearful when others are greedy. So I think that helps us a little bit as well in these kind of uncertain times.
Awesome. On to what is probably a perfunctory question, given where we are in the COVID pandemic here. Here's the COVID question, which is hopefully, one of the last webinars that we'll be on is the world hopefully opens up and there's no more waves. Just wondering, given where we are and we're seeing the market, the world opening up, there's a lot of talk about the world changing and buildings are going to be designed differently. We're going to be working differently. We're going to be doing all these things differently. Where we are today, looking to you guys, are you factoring those things into like new projects going forward, or do you think that a lot of that was overplayed, and and the world post-COVID is going to look a lot more like the world pre-COVID than in the midst of it? Just wondering for your thoughts on that, Matt. Maybe you can start us off on this one.
Yeah, sure. It's one of those questions where you sort of take a shot at it, and in a year, there's a good chance you might look dumb. But as far as say like the work from home thing goes, and this has kind of been debated all throughout COVID, so everyone's got their own opinions on it. I think Westbank's a little bit biased. We obviously own and build quite a bit of workspace ourselves, but We're big proponents of office space, the need to have everyone physically in the same workspace, having those impromptu conversations, building those in-person relationships that spark creativity and build a bit of a hive of productivity. We'd subscribe, I think, to the argument that we had this bank or this buildup of culture and allegiance to companies and shorthand and relationships working with each other. So we were able to, the course of the pandemic, work pretty well virtually, but we've been making withdrawals from that bank. And at a certain point, you're not actually going to know everyone you're working with that well, and you're not going to have corporate culture or any loyalty to the company. So it sort of necessitates that shift back to the office. But at least for a while, it does seem like, a lot of these companies will do a bit of a flexible working schedule, some at home, some in the office, especially as people have sort of cobbled together the work from home offices that they need to actually do it. For a while, then, I can definitely see a lot of companies doing that hybrid model, but that's especially now while people are struggling to attract talent, and we'll sort of see where that goes as the pendulum swings the other way, so to speak. There's other things that I definitely think are here forever, and COVID just accelerated the trajectory. There's small examples like touchless elevator systems and doors. Outside of COVID, there's probably a lot of hygiene issues with people, touching all the same handles and buttons and stuff. So that sort of thing, I think will become more standard. More broadly, though, I think COVID accelerated the trend of people wanting to focus on their wellness generally. Wanting the best air quality where they're living and working, access to the best gyms, healthy food, focus on sustainability and net zero, building communities where they're living. I mentioned earlier the projects that we're doing in San Jose. One of those projects is over 1 million square feet of workspace designed by Kang Okuma. And, it's sort of designed in that way where the idea is to blur the line between indoor and outdoor space. It actually has a void through the entire building. And at night, all the windows in the building open up and it flushes all the air out of the building and actually cools the concrete structure so that you're not burning a bunch of energy during the day to air condition the building. So, I think that general push towards a sense of wellness is here to stay. But some of these other things, I think will fall away. People are pretty resilient and want to get back to the way that they were living before.
Totally agree. Fabian, any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I think, it's so interesting in the media too. It's like, it's great for headlines. Like, it's like we're either all back in the office or we're all never going there again. And just demolish all the downtown office buildings. And it's just not like that, right? Like the reality is, whether it's through, statistics and studies or anecdotally talking to our friends and family, is like the hybrid model's here to stay. I think people are probably working as hard or harder than they ever have. And I think one of the blessings of COVID has been, it's kind of forced a real shift in organizational thinking and frankly, like senior leaders to look at it and say, wow, when people say work from home, they're actually like not sitting on their couch watching Netflix. Like they're working, and they're working hard, and stuff's getting done, and it's getting done on time or faster, and our overall company's more efficient and people are happier. And I'm weighing that in an environment where, beyond like raw goods, like there's an absolute war for talent, and employers need to be much more responsive to what their employee base needs. And if that means someone needs to kind of, leave early or arrive late to handle daycare pickups or support, a loved one or just for their own mental health, like I think that's so much more viable now. And I think people have proven that, working from home works. So I think the balancing act is that you can't work 100% from home, to Matt's point, and expect to have good company culture, that kind of convergence of ideas that is like what, collective existence kind of creates, right? So, and the other very practical thing for employees is that it's going to be really hard to get that promotion you're gunning for if you're never in the office and have never seen your boss in person, right? So I think it's a balance there, but I really think the hybrid model is here to stay. It's kind of entrenched in corporate culture in a healthy way. Matt kind of covered off things about, enhanced air purification and health. So I think maybe I won't touch on that. The only thing I would probably note is look at what we're seeing, in our office markets, right? It used to be like the suburban office market used to really lag behind the downtown core. I'm kind of looking over here at the downtown core. And now, even pre-COVID, drive times and commuting was getting so bad in Vancouver that people actually started really benefiting from suburban office locations, became more popular. And now we're seeing, whether it's for-profit business or the government and provincial government in Victoria, they're setting up satellite offices that are oversubscribed, where people are cutting their commutes by 75%. And at the same time, we're seeing really strong demand for downtown office space. And that probably speaks to an overall lack of supply and a continued kind of job growth, within our region. But it definitely doesn't feel like an either or from where I'm standing.
Yeah, it's almost like if companies have an office, it needs to be focused on that collaborative space, amenities near other firms, which is why you're seeing that, that strong appetite that we're seeing in downtown Vancouver. But, to have an office for the sake of having an office doesn't really kind of hold water anymore in terms of to your point. Yeah, I don't think any of us would say that we were unproductive working at home over the past couple of years because there was just so much to do. So those are great points. Thanks, Fabian. Kristin, I think a lot covered there, but wondering what your thoughts are and if any of this is playing into the projects that you're kind of in the design stage at now.
Yeah, for sure. And I totally agree with what Matt and Fabian said. And I agree with Fabian that I think hybrid work is here to stay in some capacity. It may not look like it does today. There's some roles that lend themselves to hybrid work better than others, but I think it's here. As you can tell, PCI, we've embraced hybrid work and we are an office developer. So it took a lot to get there, but I think that's a really good thing for us as an office developer. I think it helps us to be empathetic to our tenants who are struggling to try and make decisions about office space and how they're going to manage their office needs going forward. Again, as others mentioned, the tight labor market, I think we have to do everything we can to make sure we are able to hire from the biggest pool of talent and retain the people that we've got right now. Over the long term, we're biased too, I guess, because we are an office developer, but we really believe that companies will want office space. Their staff might not be in every day, but again, as Matt talked about, it's central to culture. So we have not seen a lot of space coming back to the market from bona fide companies, particularly in the downtown core, as people thought might happen. They may have given up secondary space out in the suburbs, but in downtown, once that space is given up, they're not getting it back, just given the low supply. So we just have not seen a lot of turnover. Just really quickly on the residential side, I would just say that COVID has really shown us the importance of well-planned amenities. So truly usable amenity space. I think the market was exposed to whether those amenities were valuable or not during COVID. And so I think that's something that's kind of going to last. People are going to have different spaces within their homes and buildings to work, to entertain and to work out. So we're definitely thinking a bit more about how to incorporate, home offices or some element of a home office into our floor plans.
Awesome. Being cognizant of time here, I see we have about 20 minutes left and a few questions to get through. So just, quickly on this one to kind of round out what we're seeing on the developments, and then we'll move on to more of a discussion about the lending environment and your different financing strategies. Any new trends that you think are going to come out of the woodwork here, looking forward that we haven't seen before that you're incorporating into your new developments? Fabian, do you want to just kick us off?
Sure. I'm going to put a timer on myself too.
Yeah. I should have a red button.
Yeah.
Really good though.
Matt nailed it. And Kristin elaborated on it. Wellness. I think wellness is huge. I think 5 or 6 years ago, the market was, woefully undersupplied for even just a good gym or a good meeting room. It was just kind of like a crummy piece of equipment somewhere. It was an afterthought, right? 3 or 4 years ago, I think it shifted where people were like, no, we're going to do really nice facilities where it's like the Equinox model, but in your own home. And that was really good pre-COVID. And I think it's just continued to evolve through COVID, where it's not just about physical fitness and wellness anymore. It's about mental mental wellness, and how are you taking care of yourself? Whether that's a meditation room, whether it's some place where you can go and you're living in a small space and you can work in a proper kind of co-working space that's really well kind of designed, and you can use it, whether it's, in response to COVID or the gig economy or people's side hustles or just working from home. So I think that's big. We're kind of tapping into that in a big way. We've got a project coming up in Burquitlam where our amenity offering is largely, driven by kind of having spa level amenities. So it's, top penthouse floors, saunas, steam, hot tub, cold plunge, thoughtful space to kind of really recharge. So I think that, and I think, other things that were here prior to COVID that just continue to grow, things like parcel delivery. The States was way ahead of us on this. I went down to rental buildings in Seattle 7 years ago. There were boxes everywhere. And that's happening here now, which is good. And so I think we're going to continue to see that. And I want to take all the good answers, so I'm going to cut this out.
Awesome. Matt, any more insights?
Yeah, those were some good answers and ones we totally agree with. Anything wellness. And I think, not just necessarily in the building, but trying to take advantage of sort of the ecosystem of companies and assets that we have so that, tenants in our buildings feel like the benefits, extend beyond just where they're living or working. So if you're a tenant in one of our residential rental buildings, you have access to our fleet of e-bikes, and do you get are you the first to know about a concert at one of our music venues? Do you get a discount on tickets to that concert? That sort of thing is becoming important. Just generally making things better in their lives, or more convenient. And I think to the idea of taking the rental buildings, for example, to make a rental building pencil, we talked about where construction costs are going is difficult. And to get the premium that you need to make it work, you really need to have some sort of differentiating factor to your buildings these days. For example, we've got one building under construction in Seattle that there's been a few news articles on lately. Our 1200 Stewart project, it's about 1,000 units of residential rental above 125,000 square foot commercial podium, and we're hanging a 747 retired airplane through the Galleria space that'll be Westbank's head office there, and it'll be connected to a Live Nation music venue. And the idea of this homage to Boeing and the airplane industry in Seattle is carried through the design of the residential interiors. And so, finding a way like that to distinguish yourself that isn't easily copied by competitors by, making cabinets slightly nicer or putting a pool table in the amenity room is important. And it helps people that rent there really identify with the building, and it's a personal statement about who they are. So I think that's all I'd kind of layer on to what
the competitive edge is that there's not going to be a lot of used 747s available.
Yeah, I mean,
it's
harder than it looks, I swear.
That's thinking outside the box.
Yeah.
Kristin, anything to add there before we move on to some discussion on the lending side?
Yeah, I think that the one thing I'd add in terms of new trends is just on the office side, a lot of tenants are looking for more flexibility in their programming and for higher quality kind of diverse spaces within their premises. We're actually going through a redesign of our office right now. We're taking on another floor and we're really focused on common areas, flexible workspaces, and ways to incentivize people to want to be back in the office. I think we're seeing a bit of an increased demand for turnkey or close to turnkey office product, which is a bit new. We're leasing up a building at 601 West Hastings, which we started leasing right when COVID hit or just before COVID hit. So that's been a little bit of a challenge, but we're seeing tenants that they're really delaying decisions as long as possible, just because of the uncertainty coming out of COVID. So we're working on advancing a lot of those premises improvements, starting the process for getting the permits in place, starting the build out, even building it right out to turnkey, so that when tenants want it, they're closer to being ready to go. And we are seeing an uptake in our leasing as a result of that.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. I know kind of when I was asset managing some downtown office buildings during COVID, for some of those smaller businesses, they just kind of, if their lease expired, they were able to just close up shop and work from home for a bit. But maybe now they're thinking, they want to get back to an office space and how do I get into that quickly? And so you guys are kind of taking care of that entitlement question on that and the build out. So yeah, I agree. I think we're going to see a lot more of that. So just kind of moving on quickly for all the lenders in the audience here, just wanted to quickly, combine the next kind of two questions. Wondering if you can shed some light in terms of, your general lending requirements on these projects, what types of lenders you typically work with, and what are those hot button issues for you? Price, structure, recourse, anything that you can, any tips that you can give for lenders wanting to work with your groups. Kristin, why don't we'll start with you again, because I know you're kind of leading the charge over there at PCI on this.
Yeah. So, like the others in the group, we've got some complicated and larger projects in our pipeline. There's approval risk, there's media attention, there's different asset classes that are all kind of combined together. So we work with a lot of, sophisticated lenders who understand our business well and are flexible and adaptable when things change. We tend to lean on some of our longstanding relationships where we know that the lender will be there for us, and hopefully on the flip side, the lender has the confidence that we will deliver. We're looking at and using a lot of the new CMHC programs, or CMHC programs in some cases have been around for a while. I think those programs have been very positive. I think they've done a really good job at incentivizing rental construction. There's some details to still work through, particularly on one of their programs, our CFI program, but which has been a great program. But I think overall it's been really positive. And I think we should give CMHC a lot of credit for being entrepreneurial in the way that they're thinking about some of these programs that have recently come out. In terms of what's important to us, pricing is always going to be important, particularly with our institutional partners who, they manage the cost of capital on a more portfolio basis, and they're looking at whether new debt is accretive or not to their overall portfolio. So they're quite price sensitive. But, I think others will probably say much of the same thing, but we really look at the whole package where the relationship is incredibly important, flexibility, creativity, the leverage, the recourse, all of it is part of the package. I think we like to work with lenders who are going to be there through the good times and the challenging times. And we try and be reasonable in our asks with our lenders as well. We look at our lenders as being true long-term partners to us. And they're really one of our most valuable partnerships. So the relationship is super critical.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. We were about to go out for a big financing just as COVID hit, and definitely appreciated the lender that we were working with at the time, kind of going back to the drawing board and coming up with an interim solution to kind of cover us, while there was that uncertainty. Fabian, any insights as well in terms of Strand and what you're looking for and what's important to you guys on that front?
Yeah, I think Kristin nailed a bunch of it. Like, I think high level for us, we're dealing with conventional lenders, the big banks and CMHC. Totally agree. Like CMHC, especially the MLI program, we think it's going to be a big success. You get longer amortizations, you're probably saving like close to 100 bips, on rental projects that are, to Matt's point, like looking really thin on margins, and you're starting to look at, the spread versus existing assets and their cap rates. And like, you don't get that 75 to 100 point spread that you need. That's like, well, why are you developing the asset, right? Or why are you taking the risk? It's not justifiable. So we think that program is going to be fantastic. And yeah, I think it comes for us. It's about relationships, and then having someone who works with us and understands, what are our particular needs. And, sometimes it might even be like we take on a little bit less debt than we want, or that they might think that we want, and just making sure people are comfortable with that. So yeah.
Awesome. Matt, I know you kind of work as a private developer, but also with a lot of institutions, so probably encounter many of the same things I do about institutions not liking debt, and how do you work with that? Any insights in terms of what you guys are looking for in the market?
Yeah, I mean, it's I don't want to be too repetitive. It's a bit of a case-by-case basis. We work with all the major banks. We're probably one of CMHC's largest borrowers, and can't say enough about the programs that everyone else has mentioned already. I just go back to what Kristin said. It's a bit cliche, but looking for long-term partners on the lending side is the most important thing by far. We've talked a lot about how quickly things can change, and when a pandemic happens or there's a major strike or supply chain issues, you find out really quickly whether lending groups are truly long-term partners or paying a bit of lip service there. Generally speaking, all our Canadian lenders are second to none globally, and I'd say the same thing about CMHC. And they've been really amazing throughout the last couple of years of challenges. And so that's why we often try to bring our lending relationships from Canada down to our stuff in the US. Because being able to, help when things get tough, and being able to pivot and make changes quickly rather than just pointing at the original agreement, that's worth more than a few basis points one way or the other. So I think that's all I'd add there.
Well, that's great. On to our final question here, and to Fabian's point, Andy, we'll try and cover your question on the open office post-COVID, which is a hot topic over here at BGO, seeing as we're going to be moving our offices in the next year or so. Predictions for 2023. Wondering if you could share, do you think it's going to be more of the same challenges that we're talking about today? Are there any other kind of big challenges that you see on the horizon, and any kind of final thoughts that you want to leave with the audience here? Fabian, do you want to start us off here? Okay,
well, I will quickly try and answer Andy's question. So open concept office. Yeah, I think it's going to be there. I think hot desks, partitions, open space, and a mix of private offices. And the reality is like, if you're not comfortable coming into the office from a health and safety perspective, or sitting in an open office, like you're probably not comfortable coming into the office at all, in the kind of worst case, kind of macro health environment. So yeah, I think open offices will continue to be here, even though studies from 4 or 5 years ago show they're not as conducive to efficiency as people say. But that's a whole another topic that we can talk about in a different webinar.
That's why we'll be working from home a bit too.
Yeah, totally. So kind of predictions for 2023. Yeah, I think we all kind of can see the writing on the wall, like with what's happening with QT and how the central bank is responding to inflation. And it's good that they are, because we're at 5 or 6% inflation, and that gets to a dangerous place. And everyone who's on this panel has kind of spoken to rising costs and its impact on housing affordability, or business space affordability, and that's not a good thing. So I think you're going to see costs are going to continue to rise. I think rents and revenue, interestingly enough, are going to continue to rise as well, because we've got a really strong job base here. A lot of people are earning good incomes, and we're seeing it in the numbers, even, over the first quarter of 2022, with both rents and property prices rising. So I think we can expect a little bit more of that. I know it got really hot, so it might be a bit of let's just say like a cooling maybe of housing prices over the next 6 months, where it becomes a bit more sane and not as frothy. I'm working my adjectives here. And I think big challenges, I think, are going to be labor supply. Skilled labor in the field, skilled labor in offices. I just think I said it before, it's a war for talent right now. And material supply has been covered by supply chain. And I think entitlements are going to continue to be a problem. And I'm thrilled that the BC government is starting to kind of threaten municipalities who aren't meeting their housing targets. They might not get funding, and that the decision might be taken away from them, because we've got a real problem, and we need to start addressing it with supply. We can't tax our way out of the housing crisis. So
definitely agree. Those are really good points there. We've got 3 minutes left. Matt, any big predictions for 2023?
Exactly what Fabian said. I mean, we got a huge deficit of housing, and we don't build enough each year relative to the 400,000 immigrants we're bringing in. So we need to find a way to improve it faster and densify. As far as the inflation side goes, and just looking at it a little bit from the lending side of things, lenders might end up, I don't want to speak for them, but looking at some of the traditional underwriting requirements and taking a second look at those. And by that, I mean, if you're financing an office building or a condo building, do you really want your borrower to have pre-leased 70% of that or sold 70% of that, and then find out, 2 years later that hard costs have gone up 25%, and all of a sudden the deal doesn't pencil and everyone's got a big problem? Or would you rather they left some of that space unleased or unsold? And, to Fabian's point, those rates would be going up in step theoretically with your costs, and the project still works. So, we may have to question just traditional wisdom on what's really de-risking a project, is maybe the only thing I'd add there.
That's a really good point. Kristin, rounding us out here, what's your big predictions for next year?
I don't know if I have any big predictions for next year, but I would just say I think we'll continue to see a pullback in globalization over the medium term. I think a lot of firms are rethinking their supply chains and trying to bring more production back onshore. So I think we're going to continue to see higher input costs. Inflation, hopefully the interest rate increases will moderate that a bit, but a significant factor driving the period of low inflation we've enjoyed has been outsourcing the production of goods to lower cost markets, which has allowed us to enjoy lower prices across a lot of areas. We'll continue to have some challenges on the labor side, but I think ultimately we're a big believer in BC over the long run. We're seeing more companies open offices in Vancouver with high-paying jobs. We've got a great quality of life in BC, stable democracy, strong institutions. I mean, the list just goes on. So I think our industry, the challenge for our industry is to support that growth and ensure we're creating the conditions to continue to attract that talent in those firms into BC. So overall, there'll be some challenges, but we are bullish on BC and on Vancouver over the long term.
Well, I think that's really well said. Spot on, definitely. So just wanted to thank you guys again, Matt, Kristin, Fabian, for all those insights. We chewed up the entire hour, and I think that we still could have kept talking. Thanks again to Turner & Townsend for sponsoring today's session here, and to Andy Pham for asking me to moderate it. So with that, we'll let everybody get on with their days. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.